So I suppose my early forays into gay clubbing was probably when I lived in London for 4 years while I was a student, and yeah, I experienced a few venues there. So everything from pubs to clubs to late night bars, I suppose, and enjoyed them. Got frustrated by them. Um, I don't know. I don't know whether I have a lot of fond memories of them. I don't know whether I had great experiences in them, but yeah, it was that. And then I guess I kind of got fed up with living in London and moved to a place called Leicester. And Leicester, for its sins, was more of a community place, and that's where I met my business partner. And we started formulating plans and ended up moving up north and doing the various things that we've done since. So, and I'd like to think in some ways tried to inject some of the things that we'd both learned from the clubbing scene at that time. No, I shouldn't say that really. I was going to say it saddens me to say GAY, but I suppose because there was that sort of thing about, it's camp music and whatever else, but actually it was really formative for me. You know, I was there pretty much every weekend, if I'm honest, when it was still at a venue called the Astoria.
Yeah.
Which has now been demolished to make Charing Cross Road tube stations. And that venue held a lot of fun for us. It was a great venue. You could just run around and be naughty in and all sorts. So I really loved it there. And having the balcony out there that you could look down on everybody, it was just such fun. But there were also other sort of minor venues around that area. I also really loved an indie club at the time because Britpop was sort of very interesting at the time. It was very prominent at the time, and there was a venue called Pop Stars, and Pop Stars was massive. So it used to be Pop Stars on a Friday, GAY on a Saturday, and then kind of like Heaven and the Fridge and places like that were all a bit too scary for me. They all felt a bit too, I don't know, oppressive, or I didn't get the music at the time. These days, I'd probably love them, but I had a real love for a drag queen called Regina Fong, who was the most unusual drag queen that I've ever seen. She was so funny, so talented, and the act was basically a bunch of clips that she'd put together that were really funny and that the audience basically joined in with. So I used to go and see her south of the river at the RVT, but then I would also go and see her north of the river at the Black Cap in Camden, which for me was probably the pub that I enjoyed most in London, I would say. You know, the gay pub that I enjoyed most. But no, I tended to stick mostly to central London, so it would be venues like 79 CXR, the original Q Bar, Kudos, which is now closed, the Yard. You know, it'd be all those sort of central ones that I liked.
Yeah, I mean the Black Cap that's long gone now, isn't it?
It is, although I have read that in the last 12 months there have been petitions to save it, but it's just the amount of money to actually save it from the property developers is ridiculous. I don't think it will ever come back now. I think you have to look at the changing way that gay life has moved on as well. You know, being frank, certainly when I started gay venues, you know, the reason for gay people to go out was to meet other gay people. Well, who needs that anymore when you've got one of those? You know, it's so easy to meet people on the phone, and I think in doing so, I think people lose a huge amount of experience from their lives. You know, there's a whole load of opportunity missed, I think. Okay, it's not the only reason, but I think it's one of the foremost reasons. You know, other things are out there like, you know, things like the smoking ban and things like that. The prevalence of noise complaints as councils decide that they want to mix sort of town centre living with town centre entertainment. But I do think that one of the winning factors for me is definitely the fact that you no longer have to go somewhere to meet people. When we first opened the venue called Fuel, which at the time had, massive great windows across the front, people used to come up to us and they used to say, well, I don't know what you're doing that in the centre of town for. You'll get those windows bricked in within weeks. People don't like the gays up here and all these sort of things. That never ever happened. But one of the things that we did do is I think that we pretty much single-handedly started to change attitudes towards sexuality. Now, the moment you start to change attitudes towards sexuality, people suddenly want to come and party in your venues, but equally, the LGBT community wants to party in other people's venues as they become more sort of at home there. So you then get this spread of customers across everybody. So suddenly, again, the need for LGBT plus venues starts to diminish. And there are only so many people you can service at the end of the day, and if the clientele is dwindling, so will the number of venues. And I think that's happened in many cities. Even I would never have thought it would happen in London, but I think even in London that's happening, but certainly elsewhere. And it's one of the reasons why we as operators have really had to open the doors to a wider community. Otherwise, we would have died. And I think that's why venues have started to just become more generic over the years. They're not as exciting as they used to be. They're certainly not as exciting as when I first started going out. But it's adapt or survive. It's adapt or die, really. That was one of the key factors for us in having to make the awful decision to close one of our venues, because we just, in tandem with the landlords, couldn't really work out how we were going to get through, potentially another sort of 6-9 months, really. How are we supposed to pay £33,000 a year's rent on fumes, really? Because once you've paid the staff, once you've paid all of your stock off, all of your electric bills, your gas bills, and everything else, where's the money to then pay the rent? I think coronavirus, I think, has probably been the straw that's broken the camel's back. A lot of landlords will not give you, they won't give you a rent break for a while. The government has given out so much support, but is seemingly not wanting to give additional support. And venues are just wondering, well, when are we actually going to be allowed to be open? Because as we've seen from the outbreaks of coronavirus in the nightclubs of Seoul in South Korea, and actually LGBT nightclubs in Seoul in Korea, there's been some serious issues with outbreaks of coronavirus, which now have meant further lockdown in Seoul. And you can't help but wonder, if we start to open nightclubs and late bars in this city too soon, or in this country too soon, that actually further outbreaks could be likely to take place and we could be looking at a second wave. I don't, as much as the mood music coming out of Whitehall at the moment is that the hospitality sector can start to open from July, the reality of it is that I don't see nightclubs opening until November at the earliest, possibly next year. And the whole point of the coronavirus measures is that we talk about social distancing, and I totally understand the need for that. Unfortunately, the nightclub industry is predicated on the term social closening. The two just don't match. We are here to make people close, to interact with each other, to dance with each other, to get off with each other. How do the two survive? And for that reason, I think we are in it in this industry for the long run. And I do think that a lot of venues are struggling and are going to continue to struggle. I was reading this week that the Royal Vauxhall Tavern has started a crowdfunding page just for this eventuality. That's desperation playing out.